All right. That's cool. You're safe for being in your sleep. Oh, and I feel it. Okay, you're clear. There's your red. Oh, not children. Exciting. Where do you want to see? Maybe shape. You just process. Or I maybe to go to the back of the room. I'm human. Be the double. We're safe. Be the following. Stay on. One thing. Everybody is good. Maybe I can do hers. Okay. What's still yours? Going by this color. I'll say some. To your left. There's the co-back, the chairs are to your right. On to the right. No, while you're. There you go. Show us on the right. You're on the left. Oh, show her on the left. Help us so you can see that behind. I can't stop. I can see it come over. Don't sing. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm gonna have you go to the. I did at home, we were just talking about a joke in the bars. Have you slouched down? That should just sit on chair. So. Hey, Gina. Can I hear Molly? Oh, there's this chair. Am I sitting down? Yeah, there's a chair in between the jeans. Oh, okay, you want me to go here? Yeah. Okay, you did it. Okay, so what chair's just gonna feel, so we're gonna try this Swedish, so. You know, this chair, and now I'm doing that chair. You're not. Shimmy is the dash. Okay, but this is it, you guys have a lot more. Yeah, sure. Pretty far, so like a real stretch out. Do you need? No, no, oh, they're not even, okay, I have the dollars. You just did, it was literally hanging and you good bad. That's like. Okay, I will, you can say, can you just say. I mean, like, we picture our United. And I miss your heart. Well, I don't think that's where you're going to. I'm a future, we have to now. First, yeah, and you're gonna have labor that, and right here, your other night, your right hand. Sleeping, and I'm gonna get your own head. You are. Oh, sad. I can't even make it tonight. Yeah, one stream, and there's. I don't know, such a bill, there is insurance, no. I feel the buttons, the real spells, and I something so that they not accurate. Means. Yeah, I got that. I can go to it. So, you know, I like this, but I'm thinking about this. Yeah, I have. Well, it's I think it's good. I don't know. She's been okay. Yeah, it is. I said it. Just kind of short game. Yeah. Because it I don't trust me. Where's it going? The foreigners who are coming, I don't have it. Alright, so we'll, yeah, they're not, I feel. Sure. I didn't. Ever, but then, they are, okay. But we not my neighbor, I'm sorry. Not. Yeah. I. So I don't see. And, but, here, never get it. Sign your name. Sign your name and then. So. Wow. So we're gonna use your left. Yeah. Yeah. I'm signing above it. Oh, I got it. Yeah, I'm just like, so I'm just, well, the thing doesn't work. Coffee. Okay. I need something, and I think about that, it's because it's great, yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I don't care. Yeah. But there's something with that, and I got you guys. And that really. It's like they were done. So, yeah, they were done.
That was just a little exercise of using the use of a guide technique under blindfold. That we practice, that we teach not only littles, but adults, teachers, providers, all of those to help for those with a low vision, visual impairment or blindness, okay? Show of hands, was it kind of disorienting at first? Yeah. Okay, so those of you who have glasses, did you take your glasses off? Was that even more disorienting or kind of the same? Very.
I would.
So like for me, it is different if you're driving in a car and you're used to glasses and you have blindfold on. I got really nauseous when I had to do that. We went to Burr's cafeteria. I couldn't do it. I just, because of the movement of the car. So think about those little ones who don't have any vision or have vision impairments and there's motion and things like that going and, you know, think about how they might feel if there's a lot of motion going on with the impairment. So thank you for coming. This is orientation mobility, simple lunch and learn. It's going to be very basic information. And I'm going to be asking you some questions because I know some of you have already gone out to the families and talked about O&M. And I know the question that keeps coming up is, you know, when do we call you in? What do we look for, that kind of thing? So I'm just going to kind of touch up on a little bit of that. It's not going to be a big broad thing because it could go on and on because as we all know, all of our families are different. All of our families have different needs and different places that they're at within their children and their diagnoses and all the other things that go along with that. So this is just not going to be a rigid slide with a bunch of that information. Okay. All right. Any questions about anything? How was the signing on the card?
Lucas laughing.
So Chloe and Erica over, I want those on Chloe's side to move all your cards to the east. Erica, go to the west. And then I'll collect them. I'm just curious to see how those turned out. Jane, when I said it's at the top of the table, did you understand what I meant? How far at the top of the table, right? How wide is my table? So you see, it's all these little details that you have to think about is that, well, how far, how deep, how wide, how narrow, that kind of thing. So think about when kids are trying to take steps, whether it's off stairs, whether it's curbs, or just trying to go over a threshold. I know Luke mentioned I felt the threshold. I don't know if any of you felt the threshold, but it changes when you're in motion. Okay, something's there, but I don't know if I'm quite stable because some thresholds are very uneven, right? And some are metal. There's another sound cue. Then there's just like, what was that sound? That could be alarming too. So, don't know where I was going with that, but thanks anyway for hearing me. All right, so there's 3 questions we ask in O&M. So this is where I'm going to start. This is, where am I? All right, so when families are talking about, oh, they're doing fine here, they're doing fine here, remember 2 things. Familiar versus unfamiliar. So when they're at home and they're doing things are familiar to them. They know where things are at. They're going to be able to go places. They're going to be able to do things. But how is that transitioning to maybe grandma's house if they don't go on a regular basis? How is that transitioning to maybe going to the couch if they're not being mobile? Okay, so you're asking, so, where am I in my space? Well, you're at a table, but I could tell when I was bringing all of you in, as soon as the masks went on, this is what we got, this was it, because your whole position is like, I've got to trust someone who I know of through work, but now I have to increase that trust even further because they're guiding me somewhere. I have no idea where I'm going and what I'm doing. You've been in this room multiple times, but I purposely did not put it in the same format for you guys. And originally I was just gonna have you come in and find your chair. And I was just gonna give you the verbal directions and have you understand what I mean by positional concepts, what I mean by giving them directions as to turn left here, turn right here, stop, this is what you have, okay? We just rearranged it this way. So you ask yourself, where am I? That could be by the couch, in my crib, stroller, walker, car seat, all of those things that I have listed. I'm not gonna read them. Empty space. Some of you, I had told you while you're in empty space, I'm standing beside you and I told you, I may touch your hand or touch your arm to let you know I'm still here. I don't know how many of you have been in a place, if it's been dark, and you're like, I don't know what's around me, I don't know where I'm going, I don't know what to do. It's really, for me, it's unnerving. I don't know about anyone else, but it's unnerving and it's very discomforting. So you think about that for your little ones, when it could be going from a bright place to a dark place and their eyes don't adjust. So you have to think about that when you're talking to parents about, so that they walk in and next thing they just stop and they won't move. Well, why would that be? Well, if they're going from in to out and the lights are different, the sunlight, all that stuff, and they have photophobia or just that light adjustment, they may know that I'm standing inside my doorway, but at that moment, I don't feel that. So that's giving them time to have to let them adjust to that type of change up, so to speak. Okay. So we're always asking, where am I? Where am I at in space? What's even around me? Like right now, we have the tables, you have the chairs, but all this is open space. And so he's like, can I go now? And I'm like, if you want to walk in open space by yourself, you're welcome to. But then I would know she would have automatically stopped, because at that time I felt just enough of her finger tightening up on my elbow, like, I don't think so. Okay. So where you are at in space. Any questions so far? Comments? Okay, where am I going? You guys have the luxury of a guide. Think of those who don't. It's just trying to find a spot to go from, whether that's to the toy box from the couch, to mom, to dad, to the high chair, to a book somewhere on the floor. Think also when we talk about clutter, things on the floor. I know we've all been in homes where there is a lot of stuff, right? That's clutter. That could also deter movement. That can deter, I don't know where I'm going, but I know I'm at, but I don't know where I'm going and what I need to do, because I want this book, but I don't see through all this stuff where it is. And if I have CVI, or if I have other issues, nystagmus, or I don't have central vision or anything like that, I'm just like, I don't know where I'm going, right? So also that brings back into narration, descriptive language, positional concepts, describing things positionally. Okay, your red book is directly in front of you. You need to move forward. So when I talk about narration and descriptive language, that's what I'm referring to. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And I know it's really kind of uncomfortable, because you need to stop and think about one thing. You're seeing it visually, the child is not. So you're like, well, it's right there in front of you. Great, because you can see it, but my little one can't. They don't know that it's right in front of me. And a little one, what does that mean by in front? So again, positional, left, right, front, back, top, bottom. Those are the positional concepts I bring in with conversations to have parents use those words, because what it's going to do is when they're in schools, when they're in communities, when they're doing things, because the end goal for their lifetime is to teach them how to be an independent traveler and want to move, feel comfortable to move, feel safe to move, and be efficient in moving. Okay, does that make sense? So where am I going? How am I going to go about doing that? And how comfortable do I feel about that? That's where a lot of this narration comes in with the parents and caregivers, which is even daycares, which I know it gets tough because there's lots of going on. So even if we just start talking about left and right, I'm going to the left, or I'm going forward, or we're swinging forward and back, and connecting that meaning and that motion to words, to action. So remember, if anything, we need to make connections for the child with their surroundings, with their objects, with their people, okay? Questions, thoughts, comments? I'm not gonna read through all this stuff because you guys are quite capable of reading it. So how am I gonna get there? Well, we know we can scoot, we can crawl, we can roll, we can push, you know, if we have a toy. That's how we're gonna be in motion, right? Now, I don't know if there's other descriptive words that you guys have used for others that have done some strange means of moving. If you wanna share that, I'd like to hear, because those are just some of the basic ones that we have. I mean, scoot's a fun one, but we know that comes in a different, a variety of, formats, I guess, you know, better, for lack of a better word. So how are they getting there? So when we talk to families about, so how are they moving? Oh, they're doing just fine. Well, how are they doing it? Well, they're doing this. Okay, great. So what's the next step? Well, let's take crawling, for example. We want that crawling. We need that developmental piece for the crawling, for the bilateral, for the head control, for the, or that whole body motion, for them to understand how their body moves in space and how do they do that motor planning. A lot of times if they don't see it, they don't understand, they're gonna have no idea how to do an action unless they're physically put through it and given repetition to understand this is how I crawl. Because I've seen some that are just kind of like, I got the knees, and then I'm kind of on my knees, but then I go on my tummy, but that's also them figuring that kind of movement out as well. So they're gonna figure these things out too as they're going. It comes back to helping with the physical assistance, words, and the action with the child to how they want to move and how they're gonna get to a certain place. Push toys are great because it gives them that protective, that frontal protection. So those push toys are awesome to let them feel that independent, the balance. I got this. Okay, so this is what this means. Again, the meaning, the connection. This is, okay, I'm feeling this. Because if they don't have any central, they only have peripheral. So that's something totally different, right? So we've got this. Does that make sense? Just as exciting as can be, right? Okay. All right. This has brought up conversations with parents. These are just things I had talked with some of my members with, and this is definitely not just how it needs to go, because all of you have had your different means of how you want to have how you've had conversations with parents. So I'll be happy to, I'd like to hear some of others that you might have shared with them. So my one that I have, she talks about nudging O&M when the mobility is mentioned. So when they talk about crawling and walking, that's movement, that's mobility. Let's try to talk about this, because first of all, and I'm sure some of you could probably say yes, what is O&M? I've never even heard of it. What is it? What do you do? What's its purpose? Right? So parents are going to be the same. They're not going to have any clue as to about what O&M is. O&M services is related. It goes from birth to death. So there's a lot of work that has to be done within that lifespan. So she brings that up, and then she also brings into how is the child navigating in the movement if they're mobile, whether that's scooting or crawling. So how are they doing that? Are they very cautious, or are they just, I'm going to be a bull in a china closet? You know, how are they doing it? But again, it comes back to, is it safe? Is their movement and how they're moving safe, or they're just taking all out and not being careful and cautious? We do see some of that in the little ones, right? Because they're just going to take off and they're going to go. And again, that just depends on what their eye diagnosis is. So that plays an important piece in all this too. But the goal for O&Ms and all of us is safe travel. You know, so ask, how does safe travel look like? And they might not even think about that, because we have to take that information that this is where we're at right here in our home, our living room, our kitchen, whatever. But they're going to go to preschool. They may go to the store with mom and dad. They may go to grandma and grandpa's to the park. They may go to a friend's house with their brother or sister for daycare or whatever. So they have all these other locations and these pieces of how this travel needs to look. And is it going to be safe in all of those? Right? And is it going to be such that they're going to be working towards independence and that they will do it efficiently and not just blowing through people and running kids over. Okay. Another one mentioned that, so I do want to mention that O&M isn't how you can support safe travel. This is where Heather mentioned, this is where she also brings in the positional terms, descriptive language, and the narration. So how do you talk with them about their movement when they're moving through? Are you just saying, oh, it's over there, or your book's over here, or it's in front of you? So when we say here or there, well, what is that? If I could have said, all of you, well, we're here, and just let you stand there, but then you're like, where's here? Exactly, where is here? Right, so I put you in a particular spot, and I said, here's your hand on the back of the chair. Okay, I have one who mentioned that if needs come up, each approach is differently with each family, and I'm sure all of you probably encountered the same thing too. You know, how do you address this? And I know Molly and I've had these conversations too. It's just like, you know, how do we touch upon this? You know, do we? How are they feeling about this? Today they might be okay with it, tomorrow they may not. So how you then go about that, you know your family's better, and then you can make that determination. And if it's something that's just like, probably not the time, don't bring it up. But if there's something that opens that doorway, you can do that. Another one, a team member I have talked, she has brought it up when a walker's introduced. That comes back to safe travel and being in motion. Because the walker can be helpful, but again, how do I navigate this thing? There's multiple things going on. The PTs and OTs can share this. There's multiple things going on. I got to hold on to this thing. I got to decide, how do I move forward? Do I have wheels that swivel? What do I do when I bump into something? I can't go anywhere. So now what? Right? So that comes back to narration, descriptive language, and explain to them, oh, you ran into the back of the couch. So this is what you need to do. And so those are just things that you can give as examples when the parents bring that up and you're talking with them about it. When it presents itself in its environment. Working on reaching. I have this as part of the behaviors, and a lot of times they only like to do activity here. Maybe here. But if we're here, okay. But if we're going here, that's something totally different, because this is a space I don't know anything and I don't know what's there. So reaching is one area too. So what does that reaching look like? How far? How would they, what does it appear as though they're doing? Just doing this and waiting for something? Maybe, maybe not. Or are you putting something out there that they like? And they're like, oh, okay, that's just right beyond my reach. I can get to that. Also just explaining the importance of mobility and encouraging the movement. We really need to encourage movement, because a lot of parents don't think that their kid's gonna be able to do a lot of this stuff as they have a vision impairment or blind, and we have to encourage them that yes, they can, and we have to put them through that physical motion. We have to help them motor plan. We have to help them be movers, because they will grow up, they will learn to walk, they will be going to school, they're gonna have to go from class to class, they're gonna have to play on the recess, they're gonna have to play at the playground, they're gonna get involved with their activities. So you see where I'm going with this. It's just in motion. We have to encourage that movement. What does it look like between home and other spaces? So I hear this a lot too. Oh, they can move fine at home. Okay, so what's it like at the park? What's it like at the playground? Well, they don't really like to do this. Okay, why? Why do you think that is? Well, exposure, familiar versus unfamiliar. Maybe they can't make out the distinguishing aspects of the playground. Bark and the black platforms, I don't know about you, but that makes me nervous when there's a platform and there's no marking, and the next thing you know, there's an opening there and there's a drop off. And I really wish the companies would put contrast marks on those to make a difference, to let them know there is an endpoint. We have it on our curves. I don't know why we can't put it on our playground equipment to show that distinction, that contrast. With that, the cane. This is always a I don't want to have anything to do with a cane. I don't want my kid having a cane. It's a stigma, blah, blah, blah. Don't even bring it up. If you get the feel for how that family is, don't even mention it, because we don't just work with canes. We work with kids who have low vision. We teach them how to function in the environment without a cane. So it is more than just using a cane. So they don't understand that. And I don't know what kind of experience or exposure they've had to that, but we just need to broaden their horizon and give them more information that's not just about a cane. So you don't even have to mention that. Sometimes that is a word that they don't like to hear. And then, if parents ask about it, some have come in and said, what is this? Like, well, we can call Dee and she'd come in, and I'm happy to come and have those conversations. Okay. The conversation with Molly, we meet parents where they're at. They're not ready. They don't see the need. They're not interested. The fear of the cane. They're doing okay moving. Okay, so when they bring I'm doing okay moving, so this is where you can probe further. So tell me how they're doing moving at such and such playground. If you have a conversation about where they're at in the community, how are they doing at the down the street at the park? How are they doing at the neighborhood pool, or in your pool, or grandma and grandpa's pool, or how are they doing over the neighbors to get there? So probe further to see, okay, so how does that look? And is it a safe way? Because we want to make sure it's safe as well. And how are they functioning with that? And then just keep note that, as you do your visits, just probe, see how they're doing in a variety of settings to get that information. Because that's at all those, you could just plug in little things about O&M. If you think that we might need to think about this, but you need to gather more information, that's fine. Use those opening moments to bring in, to collect more information and just kind of put little plugs in. Okay. Also, we know sometimes families and providers see differently on impacts of certain things within the family. So I might say that, yeah, this child should really use O&M or vision or OT or PT, but their parents are like, no, it's okay. So again, keep that in your mind, which I know you do. So I'm not saying you don't. I'm just doing this in a general sense. Think about how that impact is on daily mobility. And plus what the eye diagnosis is. Because some of the eye diagnosis does change. They may not even have one. And I'm just going to put a plug in here right now. Right now, at this moment, CVI, cerebral vision impairment, is the #1 undiagnosed eye vision concern that we have for our children. 180,000 kids go undiagnosed. You can guarantee one child in every classroom will have some form of CVI. You will also know that 65% of kids with CP are prone to CVI. Kids with Down syndrome are becoming more prone, that they're finding in their studies have CVI. CVI is on the forefront. They're doing a lot of studies and research on this because it is a brain-based concern. So it's all brain-based. It's not the ocular health. It's how the brain is not giving the information for them to understand what's in their environment and how they need to navigate and what they see through their eyes with toys, with being in the classroom, with lights, with clutter, with color, all of that. So just know that Molly and I'll be talking about CVI because it is becoming very prevalent within our young population, and it goes undiagnosed. Any further questions? If you have a conversation with Molly and she's like, well, let's talk to Dee and bring her in, let's do that. Or if you just want to talk to me, that's fine too. Either way, we go hand in hand with that. And then obviously conversations that I'll have with all of you at any time about mobility. You have my email, so anytime you have questions or need to want further information, just give me a holler. Any questions or comments? Thanks so much. You guys are easy crafts. Okay, so let's talk about some impacting behaviors. I think this is kind of where I know Molly and I have talked a little bit about this. What kind of behaviors should we kind of look at? Well, lack of initiative, interest in movement. They're just laying there on the floor. They're just sitting there. I don't want to move. That's one, and that could be, again, this could be a number of things, but these are just the kind of things to keep in mind as to, well, let's probe more into this. Is it just really that they just don't want to do it? Or is there an issue with vision? And again, that comes back to, have they had a eye exam with an eye doctor? That's very important because a lot of families are not getting their kids' eyes checked at a young age. And that's where a lot of our kids are falling through the cracks. We're not finding the any eye concerns at any time either. So it's really important that we impress that they need to get their eyes checked early. Now understand one thing, ocular health, functional vision are not the same. So the doctor may say, oh, their eyes are looking good and, you know, there's no concerns with this here. Okay, so then ask the families, so how are they functioning with this? So if there's nystagmus, how are they functioning with this? You know, how they managing to move and do things in the environment, not just at home, but when you're in a car. Children with nystagmus and other eye diagnoses do have a tendency that when they're sitting in a car and there's stuff going by when you're driving and they can't look, that's just too much. That's overload. That's a concern because so why is that? What's going on? So there could be something more that we need to probe further on. Just a simple example, that kind of thing. Apprehensive for fearing of movement without a person, whether it's sibling, a parent, caregiver, whoever. I don't want to move. And I mentioned this, keeping within the core space, not going beyond the reach. Any lack of purposeful movement. We talked about this a lot, you know, what's the purposeful movement? You know, without them, you say, oh, can you reach over here without the prompting? Can they just do that? Lack of attention, interest to any happenings around them. One, if they can't see it, obvious. But even with a low vision, they may still not be getting enough information to even know, and just like, I'm not gonna do anything, I'm safe, I'm comfortable, I'm okay here, just stay here, right? You don't get lack of feedback, social or motor. So a lot of times moms are holding their babies up here when they're sweet and cute, you wanna love, and there's just like, you know, if there's no response, well, we gotta look further into that. That kind of thing. And even as they do get older, this also can kind of go with what we know. We see a lot of kids being diagnosed with autism. So going back to CVI and autism, there are some very strong similarities of behaviors of CVI and autism. Lack of, I'm looking at you, is one. I don't want to do this, but I can do this is another. Behaviors of the flapping, the motion, the rocking, all those. Same, we see those with autism, we see those with our kids who are blind and visually impaired. We call them blindisms because that's their proprioceptive kinesthetic sense, and they like to have to be in motion for whatever reason, right? So I'm not saying that we don't not think about the autism, but think that we also have this other piece of it too with the vision, with CVI. Again, preference is holding on to a person, wanting to be in contact with this, you know, stable spot, whether that's a chair, an arm. I don't know, some of you that were already kind of standing out there that were just kind of standing there without anyone holding on to you. I don't know how you felt about it, but it is kind of eerie when you're standing there and you're just like, I don't know what's around me, where I should go. And if someone comes and bumps into you, you know, if you're like, I know that I'm facing the door and someone comes in and hits me and I move. Okay, where am I at now? Right? What's changed? Where am I? I'm not in the position I was before, which was here. I'm now here, but I may now be so disoriented because now all this stuff's going on. I'm like, how do I get back to here? I don't know what to do. Right? So again, they like that contact. Horizontal plane is a preferred space too for little ones. Do you guys want me to read the rest of these? Because I think you guys can read. Or you guys have any comments of what I have written up there? Because I know you all know this. I'm just reiterating it for when it comes to O&M in that perspective. You all have that, but I'm also reiterating these same sorts of information. Because again, it also comes down to with eye diagnosis. Yeah.
You also say sometimes there's like the opposite effect. Somebody like, or a child is really tactile defensive,
Yes.
or they're being manipulated.
Yes.
That might be a concern.
Yes, yes. The sensitivity. And okay, so there's a little bit of distinction of defensiveness and sensitivity. So with the sensitivity, it's just like, I don't know how to prepare this. Okay, so I gave you some preparation when we were out there, right? I could just say, put this on and go with me. And you're gonna be like, I don't know if I want to do that, right? So I gave you some preparation. So that kind of goes along the same thing. When you're introducing different textures or things like that, and this is a conversation with parents, talk with them. They need to model, they need to demonstrate, they need to help them understand. I have to figure out how to make this connection now. And that's not to say that they may not like all of it, but some just still don't like touching pudding, and that's fine. Don't force it. But they can find some other things, because when they're in school, they're going to be touching all sorts of stuff. And if they need to be a tactile learner when it comes to Braille, and using tactile markers and things, we have to work through that kind of thing. So the sensitivity and defensiveness is just absolutely, I'm not gonna do it and get the big behaviors, whereas the sensitivity is they're just like, I'm not prepared for this. So again, prepare descriptive language, narrations, help them understand that. Okay,
What about flinching?
I'm sorry?
Flinching.
Yeah, it's fine. I think that, see if you have with me, would agree with this, more of a sensitivity thing. You know, it's kind of like, even if, okay, so I can tell you, I had a student who any loud noise, even if I prepared him, I don't know about you guys, but even if I see it and I know it's coming and a car backfires, I'm still gonna flinch. That's just kind of a natural response to things, you know, but if you're saying, okay, I'm gonna have you touch this pudding, it's gonna be soft and slimy. Now, they may not know those concepts, but you're giving them information. You're kind of trying to prepare them. You're trying to make that connection and give meaning to that. So then they still might the next time, but then again, it's that repetition. Remember, this is soft, it's cold today, it's pudding, you can put it on your mouth. So again, that's where repetition comes in to see if they can work through that sensitivity of it. But that's not to say that they may like it and they may refuse. Because there are certain things, I don't know about you guys, but I don't like touching reptiles, but I'm not gonna touch reptiles. So I have defensive against that. So obviously eye diagnoses, and other impairments, orthopedic or health, posture and tone. You know, we have some who have different posture and that impedes mobility as well. This has kind of hit me a couple times too when we talked about this, is when a parent says, yeah, if I get up to go from the kitchen to the living room and I want them to come with me, they refuse. But then they'll say, oh yeah, they can go from the kitchen to the living room. Can they? Because right now you're telling me that they won't go unless you carry them or you hold them there. So why is that? You know, we need to talk, let's explore that a little bit more. Why would that be? You know, how are they feeling in this space? What happened when they went by themselves versus now that they're not, or they just absolutely don't go? So that's something you need to probe more with, you know, because that's where I don't want to do this movement. I don't want to go anywhere because I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel safe. I don't know what I'm doing. When things change up in the home, in a remodeling, furniture rearrangement, different furniture, added furniture, taken away furniture, that changes up their environment. I'm not doing anything because I used to have a red chair there. It's not there anymore. So I don't know what's going on. So just all those home environment changes do that as well. Daycares, big thing with that, you know, and that can be challenging because we know daycares are very, very busy with those kind of things. You know, then they can express their fear of transition and any type of moving. So let me hang on to you. I just don't feel comfortable. Again, that comes familiar, unfamiliar, and anywhere in between when it comes to that piece. Okay, we see more comfort, but if we're going to some places, maybe it is grandma's, but if I don't go to grandma's very often, you know, again, prepare that. Give them, you know, we need to have the parents understand, let's talk it through. We're going to grandma's. Grandma bought a new chair, and I'm gonna take you over to that chair. And this is grandma's new chair, and it's over here by this big fluffy plant. Okay, so you're giving them locations, you're giving them information to help them know when things are out in space. Okay, being in space without any connection is really kind of challenging. I think that was the last of it, but I don't think it was. Let me double check. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Anything they want to share?
So what happens, I'm thinking about your information about how underdiagnosed this is. And so,
CDI?
yes, sorry. Like just thinking about whenever we're we're literally observing these things happen. And they go to the eye doctor, we have all this information, I'm thinking of a little specific one. And then the doctor still says, nope, none of this is related to their vision.
There are some doctors who have no idea about CVI.
So what do you?
We find a doctor who understands CVI and we try to get them at point. We are trying to get a list of those doctors in the state of Kansas. Perkins is also working on getting a national registry of doctors within states who understand and know about CVI and can go further with that. Right now, we have two in the state of Kansas. We have Dr. Lawrence at Salina. We have Dr. Ketteridge in Lawrence. They both worked with CVI. And if there's any questions, Perkins is a great resource. Perkins School for the Blind is a great resource to go in to get a lot of information about CVI. They have modules, they have videos, they have family stories. They also have stories of adults who live with CVI. You can kind of, because I can guarantee you, someone in your family, as an adult, parent, grandparent, brother, sister, has CVI to some degree, okay? CVI is just, there's a lot to unpack.
Cause it's not very, is it because it's so, not subjective, but it's just multi-layered and lots of different.
It is because it's brain-based.
That's,
Yeah, it's
You need to
brain-based.
see it.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is what's really kind of, I really struggle with this a lot when I have to tell people in the community, teachers, to be specific, because that's where I was at for 11 years. Well, they can't be blind because their eyes don't look strange. Their eyes look normal. Because of aesthetics, maybe? I don't know. They're blind. They have nothing. So you can't take that you and I have normal looking eyes. I have a cataract. You wouldn't know that, right? I might have, where I have, coloboma. Well, that might be a little bit visual, but if you wear glasses all the time, you're not gonna get that. So just because their eyes look normal does not mean they're functioning normal. So remember, ocular health, functioning is gonna be different when we're doing that. So that's why Molly and I talk about, so how are they functioning with that in the homes, with these activities, when they're moving, when they're playing with things, when they're doing things? How is that in the functional piece versus the doctor says everything looks fine? Great. That's good news, but because, many of us have talked about kids with the brain bleeds. We've talked about strokes. They're prone to CVI, they're prone to vision impairments, okay?
Are those two physicians optometrists or ophthalmologists or?
Ophthalmologists. And Dr. Lawrence, we're hoping she's gonna hang on a little longer, but she's talking about retirement. But she is training another person to do that. Yes, now we do have the Can Loves program, so and Dr. Lawrence sometimes will come to, if they schedule it, will come to the campus and she will assess children, babies, our population for anything further beyond ocular health. So if there's any questions, and that's another conversation to have, would be the Can Loves clinic that gets put on occasionally with that. There's also
How do you diagnose it?
with what?
CVI?
CVI?
Is it MRI or?
Well, they go through CT scans because MRIs is not the method to diagnose. It's a matter of how we assess it. It's about assessment. So there is an assessment for infants that they had that someone in Italy has started, and it's called I'm just gonna give you the acronyms. It's NAVIG, but it's a means of assessment for ocular or vision concerns in infants from 6 months on up. And then there's also we have a bunch of CVI means of assessments that they're bringing more into, and we're learning more. Eye gaze is another one that we have done as well. And what that does is eye gaze is where, so some of you kids are doing a lot of this, or if kids are looking, they might only be looking over here in this quadrant, the upper right. So we have this eye gaze assessment that we can put the child, have them look at these different activities. And at the end, we can see where all where they're actually seeing their vision. So you and I, we can see peripherally center, right? 180, right? So they may only be all looking down here. And this eye gaze assessment will show all these dots in color that this is where they're seeing. So they're missing all of this over here. So when families are presenting foods or introductions, let's do it down here to use that functional vision piece. Does that make sense? Yeah, so because we can see central. I don't know about some of you. Some days I don't see peripherals very well, but yeah, yes.
So we just came from a visit, and this little girl had a functional vision assessment at CCBI, and they were telling the mom that she has a Virgin's disorder. Is that within the realm of CVI, or is that more muscular?
It can probably go hand in hand. Would you agree, Molly? Because of the Virgins of trying to use your eyes together versus separate.
I think we would need to see more than just that.
Yeah,
I think that's
Yeah.
fair.
There wouldn't just be one thing, even on the indicators or behaviors, if you look for CBI, it wouldn't be like, oh, they just have this, but they have CBI. I feel like you're typically looking.
there's 16 characteristics now that we look at as opposed to the 10. There's 16 now that we look at to touch up on that. And so you mentioned vision therapy.
Yeah, most of them
Totally
had that
different, yeah.
diagnosis, and it was vision therapy.
Yeah.
To, get the eyes,
Yeah,
help teach his brain kind of work with his eyes to make them work together better.
and that sounds like it could also go with the muscles with that as well, but yeah.
It's
Yeah,
muscular.
yeah, so they do vision therapy, there's some questions about that, but we always have to distinguish. TSVIs and O&M are not vision, we do not do vision therapy. We do vision services, but we don't do the vision therapy, those are two totally separate, so. Any questions about anything? Always give me a call, talk to Molly, email me, whatever, I'm here for all of you, I'm here to support everything you guys do, and I appreciate you all for welcoming to your network. I'm gonna pass it off to Molly and Deidre. Any comments about anything? I did have one question. What are some of the things you have used to start that conversation with some of the families about O&M? Or is it just kind of touched in or come through Molly? And that's okay, you're not in trouble.
To start the O&M conversation specifically.
Yeah.
Probably if they have a known diagnosis that is either progressive or that significantly limits their own status there. And then,
Yeah.
maybe that diagnosis that, as we're thinking, learning, about movement, this is a resource that, we can consider.
Okay, very good. Just know that it's not just when they start walking, it's also crawling, so
Yeah.
that's where I can work with PT and work with some of the things when we're dealing with the.
Right.
I know the PTs are fabulous here with this too, so. Okay, thanks, everyone. Okay, I'll go back. No, I'll go. Yeah. I'll get out of the way.
I'm just gonna make this really quick, because I know we don't have much time left, but now that everyone's been trained on the spot screener, we're just gonna talk about some other information on the spot screener. So we'll also explain what you see on the data displays. There's a lot of things on that data display that Molly's gonna talk about, what those mean, and what it means to talk about the information that's on the printed report. And then we'll go over the possible results, on instant reading screen and, discuss the spot screener, what the spot screener detects and how to talk about this with parents in parent-friendly terms. So just some spot screener basics. The spot can be used with anyone that's 6 months or older. You want to be about 3 feet away from them when you use it. If you're too close or too far, you'll get a little indication on the screen that will let you know. Probably the only tricky thing about getting a good reading is lighting. So you want to make sure that the lights are dimmed. You want to pull the shades down. If there is a light source that you can't eliminate, you just want to make sure that the child's back is to the light source. The spot screener can capture your reading about 97% of the time. So it's pretty good at getting a reading. It has the ability to detect 6 ambliotic risk factors. So amblyopia or lazy eye is when one eye is stronger than the other. And it's the most common cause of preventable vision loss in children. It occurs in about 3 out of 100 children. And it happens when there's a miscommunication between the eye and the brain, and one eye becomes much stronger than the other eye. Early detection of amblyopia and treatment is very important. It usually prevents long-term vision issues.
Okay, so when you do the spot screen with a child, and this is the data display screen that pops up. And I think most parents want to see that immediately. And that I feel like is the part that's the most fearful for us, because then we're expected to explain basically what I feel like an eye care specialist would explain. So just to give you guys a quick background, and this will all be obviously saved for you to look back if you needed it. But the things that I look at are like that middle piece that just says complete eye exam recommended, or if it says everything's in range and it all looks good, it's complete. But then also up above that and below the picture of the eyes, I kind of explain that to parents as like when you go to the eye doctor and they give you your prescription for lenses, like that would be like your potential refractive error. The rest of it around there that's talking about like pupillary distance and all of that, I usually just say you need to take that to the eye care specialist because that is well above anyone's pay grade here. So one thing that another thing I also share though is the OD and OS, that's right eye, left eye. Just to give them kind of a background to show what's happening. The one thing that they want to know about and what we're going to go over further is after, if you do get a complete eye exam as recommended, underneath there are those buzzwords or those indicators that it's flagging. This is also not to take place, or it's not diagnosing. This is just a screener. So that's also really important to know. This is what this is picking up one time, one picture. But in order to get a full diagnosis, you need to go to an eye care specialist. So, okay, the next one, here's the printed report that you would put in their file and go over with them again. Again, the same thing of that data display is in the middle. Up top is the actual picture that you took, which sometimes can look kind of scary, sometimes cute. And but down below where you have the grids or the graphs, anything in blue is going to be that's within that normal range. So even if it's right on the line, if it's normal, then it would say that you don't need to recommend any further evaluation. When we get into the red, that's where it's going to tell you that's how far out of the range from normal it was. So if you feel like you go through this and parents, you're clear in the red, that's another way that you can talk to them about that. Like, see this graph, like we want things to be in the blue within that normal range. This is how far out this picture that we took, this screening that we took is. So it gives you another leg to stand on when you're trying to tell parents that they need to look into it further. Okay, so just to reiterate what Dee shared, so ocular health and functional vision are two different things, right? So if you have a child that it says screening complete, everything's in range, everything looks great, but you just really feel like there's something more going on there visually, there's nothing wrong with you to share that with the family and recommend. I know this screening says everything looks great, but this is only looking at these things. These are my concerns. I really think that you need to go in and see an eye care specialist. You do since there. Okay, so now we're going to just really quickly go over each of the indicators. So if you have something in there that says a complete eye exam is recommended, these are each of the things that could come up underneath in that line. So this is just to give you guys the ability to have a little confidence in sharing that with families and what each of them.
This is usually what families are wanting because they know that something is wrong, but they probably don't understand that term. So myopia, which just means nearsightedness, means that things up close are clear and things far away are blurry. One of these things that you might see with children that have this diagnosis, or not diagnosis, this detected, is squinting when looking at distant objects or not attending to objects that are far away.
And one thing to note, if you look up at the screen, so the paper copy that you would have where that's all fully in the red, that's looking for myopia. So does that make sense? So it's like the name is there, then you have a little bit of information, but that graph is really, and there's screens behind you guys. I didn't know that. I got up here. That's why I'm pointing behind you. But anyway, so that's where each of the red indicators are. That's what it's detecting. Okay, so the next one is hyperopia, that's farsightedness. So your distance vision is blurry, or your near vision is blurry, your distance vision is clearer. So some things that you could see in children that have hyperopia or farsightedness would be squinting, holding blocks really close to their face, covering one eye, when doing different tasks. Having greater attention to things that are farther away and not as great of attention to things that are closer. So and really any of these two, and connecting that to orientation mobility, like we hear a lot of like they're tripping and they're falling. Like these are things that we want to rule out first when we're kind of trying to peel back those layers of what's going on and causing that potential ground figure discrimination, or I can't think of the term because I went off of my notes, but depth perception. Okay, depth perception. Okay.
Okay, something else that you might see is anisometropia, which is unequal refractive power. So basically just means the vision is different in one eye versus the other eye. Kids can get headaches with this, they can get dizziness. You can also see some poor hand-eye coordination with this when this is detected.
Okay, another thing that's looking for is strabismus. So this would be any kind of misalignment with the eyes. This can happen with one eye. It can happen with both. It can be consistent. It can be intermittent. So it could be, it's kind of could be anything basically. So really what we're looking for is if you feel like one eye is turning in, or looking sometimes when they're focusing, both eyes turn in. That would be another reason to bring up the spot, or just to have that conversation with the parents. And again, revert.
Strabismus can kind of lead towards amblyopia.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So all of these indicate, all of these pieces that it's screening for can lead to amblyopia. But this one I think is the.
And one other thing with strabismus, that you can have, sometimes it might be one eye that's turning in or turning out, and the next time might be the other eye. So it can also alternate between eyes. Another thing that you might see is astigmatism, which is basically means blurred vision due to the shape of the eye. And this may be present with hyperopia or myopia. So you could see both astigmatism and hyperopia, or astigmatism and myopia on the screen. It can also be present by itself. This can cause headaches, and it can cause difficulty with night vision and squinting.
And then our last one is anisocoria. This is unequal pupil size. So this can be caused by a lot of different reasons. It can be benign. It can be something caused from medication, a medical condition. Typically, if this is like a sudden onset of parents are noticing this, or you're noticing this in a visit, it's something you want to bring up immediately and have them seek immediate attention. So this would be the one thing that I would say, if I notice this in a visit, I would not say, let me bring the spot screen when I come back out in 2 weeks. I'd be referring to the primary care provider immediately. But if this is another indicator that we're looking for, I've never actually know that I've had anybody yet that I've screened and has had this yet. But, oh, and some indicators to look for with this would be light sensitivity, nausea, vomiting, and sudden vision loss. So they're much more severe than the others.
So this is just a little cheat sheet that we put together for the staff, and we'll pass those around. And it's just really important also to tell the families, mentioned this earlier, but this is just a screening. It doesn't take the place of going to eye care specialist. And then if any of those are detected, that's what our recommendation is to go be evaluated by eye care specialists.
Does have any questions?
What about in those cases where you were talking about, spot screener comes up normal, but we have that inkling that something else is still going on? Is there a person or place we recommend at this time to follow up with those questionable kids?
I would say to give the family the resource list that we, like the referral list that we send if they don't pass. Or call me out and I can have that conversation with them too.
But probably the next step is maybe going to be like a functional vision assessment.
So functional vision assessment, I would say I typically like to know the family before And while I'm in visits, I'm kind of continuously taking notes about things that I would put in the functional vision assessment. But it can get a little tricky because I feel like there's some families that when you really talk through everything with them and what their concerns are, the CBI range or focusing more on the CBI characteristics is going to be more beneficial for the team and for the family to have than a functional vision assessment. But yes, and maybe not. Like we can, like if you and I have concerns with the kiddo that we're working with, then figure that out. If that makes sense.
So it's just tough for those families where you get the results are good and then they go to the optometrist and you get the same results that it passed good, but you're just like, no, it's not.
I feel like that would be the time that if I'm not seeing that if I'm not seeing that child and supporting you guys, I should be. My next steps would probably be to do a functional or just to have a conversation with them about what I'm seeing and why I would recommend. I think everyone should have their vision checked. Yes, even if we don't have concerns, by a vision specialist.
Question, so with the spot screener, what happens if you get inconsistent results with it? Because I just had that happen where it said great, oh, it said no, not great, and we did it again, it said it was fine, we did it again, it said it wasn't. So what do I do with that?
In the same visit, or was this?
Uh,
I would probably just bring it out and try it again, and if there's any concerns, refer.
Okay,
Um,
because it was actually one of the 3 times refer, so I just said, you know, why don't you follow up just to make sure that, sorry.
I've had this happen like so with the back charge. It was giving me really weird, inconsistent.
Okay.
And
So-
then I've noticed when it's fully charged, I think I get a much more accurate.
Okay.
So I'm checking the light, making sure.
Yeah, we're gonna start a dark round. Okay, so take one out, make sure it's fully charged.
I think that's why, though, it's so important to really explain to parents that like, this is we're just screening. It's a moment in time. This does not take the place.
And that's what also tell me though, like, you know what? It's probably a good enough reason, let's go have the eye doctor check it out. Anyway, that doesn't happen to me very often, but I'm not gonna lie, if I get it, a snapshot, I don't really get. So I might be missing some kids, but if it's inconsistent, that would be a reason I would think to say, hey, let's go ahead and have an eye doctor. They can be. Especially if it's like a service issue, it might not. Do you remember what it was saying?
Yeah, the first time it said astigmatism, second time it said fine, and then the third time it was astigmatism and astigma. It was just a little bit different.
So astigmatism is kind of tricky too, because like I know I've had multiple kids with some of you guys that have had like, oh, well, we went to get their eyes checked and the optometrist said they have astigmatism, but we don't need glasses right now. And that is a real thing. So it could be picking up on a slight astigmatism, but I just feel like when in doubt, refer it out.
That's in there.
it's never gonna hurt to refer.
No. Thank you. I don't know. Thank you.
I'm like, back when I was